Hey, it's Chris. 2023, right? Ranking, reviewing, putting out your top 10 games of the year. You know what's really weird in my head is that when I look at this, I go, how can you rank all of these games, especially if you haven't played them all, right? And if you're looking at some of these lists and going through them, you often get that feeling of how can you actually, how you haven't played all of the, how do you, right? That's always my dilemma. And that's why my list last year of 2022's was out in April of 2023, which, coincidingly, it was not able to be included in the compilation of all of the YouTubers, content people's meta conglomerate of information, because they're compiling that now over on Board Game Geek as a geek list, which is very interesting to look at. They have like 30 or so games that have received various rankings. It has to have at least like 6 rankings by the somewhere between 50 or 60 people that are being included in that list right now to even qualify. And so it runs you through several of those and just kind of gives you who did what and where and who was it and blah, 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 right? And for me personally, you know, some of those games I've played. A few of those games are going to be on my list of best of 2023. But the other dilemma that I find myself in right now is, if you're like me at all, I don't have access to half of those games. Literally, you know, like I have this channel and I'm almost at 10,000 subscribers and I just can't get my hands on some of these games, period. And if you're not, or you're not shelling out to get it right away, you're not going to have access to most of these games, or I shouldn't say most, a good number of these games in the first place, because a fair number of these are also second half, or even I dare say quarter 4 of 2023, which begs the question, if you could play some of these games, if you could have played all these games, would that have changed up some of your order? I don't know. I took a look at this. I took a look at 2023 overall, and I said, these are the ones I still haven't played that I really kind of want to know how I would feel and wonder if they would slot in my top 10. I may end up doing a top 20 this year, top 25-ish, and break it up into the 2 like I did with the arriving crowdfundings. Because to be frank, 2023 is freaking good. And the other thing that this tells me is such a long list, right? 20 plus games, really 30 or so, only getting at least 6, because I know there's probably plenty others that didn't get even the prerequisite 6, right? That there's a lot of variety out there as a whole. And that's what intrigues me. And that's why I'm open to trying out these things, because I think maybe a few of these would slot in. But let me run you through a few of my thoughts, questions, and concerns about some of the games on this list, why they may be appealing, why I kind of don't like them, or why I would really be interested to see how I would think about them if I get a chance to play them in the near future. Let's go. Long preamble, I'm sorry. Hit my head on the overhead camera before filming this. Oh man, let me tell you, as a bald guy, there's no cushion there, folks. Full disclaimer, none of these are in any particular order, but they're just of interest to me. The other interesting thing I didn't see on that list at all was expansions. Do people put expansions in their top 10 lists nowadays or not? Right? Well, let's just start there, because this is what my point is as a whole. I didn't really see it when it came out, of people like shouting out Dune Imperium Immortality or Rise of Eeks, right, as Game of the Year. And so similarly, I don't really see anywhere on this list on the Board Game Geek, and I'll throw the link actually in the description below. I don't see Ark Nova Marine Worlds, right? I don't see the other big expansion that got delivered recently, neither of these of which I've been able to play, Spirit Islands Nature Incarnate. I know, game nerds finally got me my copy like 5 months after pre-ordering it. 4 months after they said it was initially going to be out, and way too long after Greater Than Games said it was going to be available at stores in North America. But I don't have any experience with either of those, right? And you could, right? Like I said, have these games. You know, both of these have been available, unlike a few others that we'll talk about in a little bit on this list. And so, yes, that's dynamically okay. Capstone put it out way early. A couple big channels had it. And I don't know, is that still your number 1 game of all time with the expansion? Has something else dethroned it? Earth is the very popular number 1 game right now by a ton of people on that link down below. Ton of people. Or just on everyone's top 10. Is it going to make my top 10? Okay. But, you know, I don't have a chance to go through these. Like, I just got Nature Incarnate, right? Nature Incarnate is depth-wise bigger than most of the base games that are going to be on this list. So how do you expect me to be able to play that in less than a month and give a solid opinion on that? Or, you know what? Do you even count expansions? I don't think a lot of people do, to be frank with you. Tell me I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me I'd love to be wrong. But I think expansions should be included, because if you tried to do a whole separate list, no one cares at the same time. So 2 that I've had my eye on there that will have more attention. Eventually I'll end up with a copy of Marine World. Do I need it? I don't really think so. Does it fix the problem in the base game and originally? No, not really. But is it kind of nice to say you have? Probably more than anything else at this point. I own everything for Spirit Island, pretty much, except for the Deluxified token. So that's a whole nother issue in and of itself. But anyway, there you go. Now, next up, this one's going to be a little bit of a dichotomy. I'm going to try really hard not to get myself in trouble with this one, because it's just kind of a weird fit nowadays. Now, with this list, with crowdfunding, with whatever it is, right? I'm not afraid triple digits. You know, price is not a sole determiner factor whatsoever anymore. But when you start talking legacy games and you start talking limited playability, I start being harsher on that side of things. So having Ticket to Ride Legacy on a best list is really tough for me to put out there. You know, it's been pretty well received, I think. I mean, I think it was out of stock for a while at a lot of places after it came out. So I can't say that it's been total media hype from that aspect of things. But at the same time, $110 for 12 plays. Now, again, you're going to go in the comment section, the hypocrisy of that, Chris. That's $9 or so per play, Chris. So you guarantee you don't have $9 worth of plays in all of your other games. Yeah, you're right. You're right. But when we're talking the best of the best, folks, the best of the best, once you finish this one, right, you're going to be talking about this one in 2024. You're going to be talking about this one in 2025. Like, that's also a criteria for this list. And that's, you know, factors in. And so, again, I'd love to try it. But when you're talking games like this, when you're talking these legacy games, also, realistically, the optimal player count, let's just be frank and truth here and cut the crap. The optimal player count is 4, maybe 3. People, again, you guys are going to comment and say, oh, well, Chris, I had a fine, fabulous experience with 2, and everything worked out fabulously. Let's talk, though. Let's talk about standard distribution of the curve, right? Standard distribution of the curve means that, yeah, you may have had a fine issue with it at 2, but the majority of the curve is going to be at 3 or 4. So again, consistency, group-wise, required, even more so than any other game, essentially, otherwise on this list. So I have a hard time saying that this would, or any legacy game would be on a best of, because the other thing I don't hear, like I just sort of alluded to, was that I don't hear anybody going, oh yeah, we finished Pandemic Legacy and now we play it as our regular go-to Pandemic. Oh, we finished My City and we play that thing all the time as the board setup is now completely unique to us, right? And Ticket to Ride is not going to be any difference. Now, if you want to tell me the experience is an absolute joy and amazing experience, I'm not going to argue with you. And if your criteria, again, is going to be different, that's fine. That's sort of like the MVP debate in sports, right? What does most valuable actually mean? So again, love to get it at some point, but that's a hefty price point. You know, again, for me to buy a $110 game to review on this channel where I make $200 a month on it, that's ridiculous. And again, as my main player count of being 2 in this household right now is, it's not feasible. Does gameplay truly triumph over everything, right? I put that out there. I say gameplay matters more than art all the time, right? But at some point, when you start reaching these levels of encumbrance from a dollar standpoint, when does dollar amount start to not feel like you're recouping the cost when you're enjoying it, right? KDM is the classic example for that. People all the time go, if this was a $200 game with no miniatures, I'd be all in on this, but $400 with these boutique miniatures that don't add a whole lot for me, pass, right? I know I'd love it, but you know, that's the phrase I hear all the time with that one online, right? I've seen that so many times. And that's what I go with this, right? If this was half the price, more accessible to a broader, wider market. I just wonder. And is that the reason why it's not being more broadly, widely considered? It doesn't even go to the aspect of the side of things that I, would only be playing it 2 players and not the full optimal account. And how many months would it take me? Because my wife is not going to want to play that repeatedly, 12 times over a short period of time in the first place. That's a lot for someone who does this as a hobby between 9 and 11 p.m. on 4 to 5 nights a week, right? So that's the balance. I just go, I don't know. I have a hard time recommending that. I am having a hard time recommending a lot of games lately for those reasons, especially on crowdfunding. I've gotten a few comments in the comment section, as a side rant here, if this wasn't big enough side rant in the first place, of people saying, Chris, why are you so negative? Chris, you're hating on everything. Oh, geez, here comes another don't back it. Don't buy it. Do you want me? I feel like those people are just like, they want me to tell them to just go buy everything. Everything is awesome. Go buy everything. Go buy everything. Spend all of your money. But spend $300 on board games this week, folks. I didn't say this month. I said this week. Yeah, that's right. Like, no. I can't in good conscience do that. Like, consumerism eats away at my soul already. And so, anyway, we're done with this. We're done with this one. Take it to Ride Legacy. I'd love to try it sometime. I'd love to. But it's not going to end up anywhere in my collection anytime soon. So, speaking of things, though, that are in my collection that I have not gotten a chance to play, I actually traded for a copy of Age of Innovation, right? I can barely get that sentence out right there. Because, I said, maybe this is going to be the one this is probably going to be the heaviest game in my collection. Although, Voidfall is probably bashing heads for it. So, I just don't know if I'm ever going to get this played. I don't know if this was a fool's errand for me to trade for it. I traded for it for something that I wanted to get rid of. So, I mean, like, win-win there, right? Like, and I know somebody will want Age of Innovation if I decide to sell it or, trade it again. But I just look at this and I go, oh, this is heavier than Terra Mystica or Gaia Project. I don't even actually know if it is. People are going to rail me in the comment section if I actually say that not jokingly. I don't know. But in my mind it is. So whatever, right? I love the idea of this, but I'm just not sure I can ever utilize it to the halfway decent extent to give you any more than superficial thoughts in a nutshell. But, it's in my collection, so at least we can talk about it from that standpoint. Tell me how easy it is to learn in the comment section. For as long as Ticket to Ride Legacy was, we'll just leave Age of Innovation that short. The other one that is on the list is making waves since Essen. Seems to be holding its tide a little bit better than most of the other Essen releases this year, is White Castle. Not the burgers, but, kids had burgers tonight. Anyway, sorry, get sidetracked here. People rail me in the comment section about that, too. Like, guy rambles on about this, but doesn't talk about the game enough. White Castle. I mean, it's a lighter, shorter Euro version with dice and more randomness than some of the critics like from that aspect. But then at the opposite end of things, you've got people exclaiming it as to be one of the best Euros of the year. So, I have no idea, right? Sort of gives me vibes of Wayfarers of the South Tigris. Now, again, not from a mechanical standpoint. Hear me out. But from a, I think I might like it standpoint. But it's one of those that I'm probably not going to know until I actually get it played. How much I'd like it. Because some of those, I'm just chef's kiss. Hansa Teutonica. Me and it are best friends. But me and Wayfarers of the South Tigris, I understand the mechanical components of it. I understand why people like it, but I can also say it just wasn't for me at the same time. And that's where White Castle would be from that standpoint. As someone who is really more enjoying the dice worker placement, the manipulation of that, I actually really, quite frankly, surprisingly, enjoyed Apiary. Is it going to be good enough to be on my top 10 of the year? Again, no spoilers here, but just because of the other things I just liked more. And so Apiary was on a lot of people's top 10 list too. If you missed this list, I'll maybe run through it here at the end of the video so you can know, or maybe I'll edit it in the beginning of the video. Anyway, but that's one that is, catching my eye, at least, more than anything else. Another one that I covered in crowdfunding, that I raked over the coals on crowdfunding, folks. I raked them over the coals, and for good reason. Pencil sharpeners should never be included, nor color pencils as add-ons or deluxeifications for crowdfunding with Sagrada Artisans. However, At the same time, I said Sagrada Artisans, actually, the game itself actually looks fantastic. I just don't need any of the extra stuff that you're offering on crowdfunding. So I just haven't also picked it up at retail because it's one of those, again, you know, $40 to $50 games of role player Sagrada-esque, whichever, you know, side of that coin argument you fall on, of which your preference is. And this is just taking it to the next level with more of a scenario-driven system, I think. So, I mean, the aesthetic has always been there. The appeal has always been there. I understand that. I understand why people like it. And I understand that this one might be the best ever of the Sagrada line. Sort of like Catacombs. Interestingly enough, I don't really hear anything about that recently. I mean, I guess maybe it was like a late 2022. I don't know. I played it in 2023 for the first time. So take that for what you will. Again, it's one of those hype hotness fall off the... And so anyway, I'm just trying to like mitigate my own personal feelings on, is it really good, but is it really going to stand the test of time? That's another criteria I'm using. Again, I love the dice placement. I love the coloring of this. I like the roll and write aspect that they've incorporated here a little bit in that vague sense. But it just hasn't made its way to my collection at this point. And again, this is one of those that probably I'll end up with a copy traded for in the middle of 2024, just because I finally got around to it. Because I finally just got around to it. And that leads me up to this one, which is another one I should have included with the expansions at the beginning. Unfair. The deck building, take that style of building your own amusement park. The latest expansion from them, Comic Book, Hacker, Kaiju, and Ocean. It just got delivered to backers like within the last month or two. And so as someone who never played the base game, but was always told like, hey, I think you'd really like this. I really like the take that style of things. You know, Funfair as the reimplementation without some take that. No, you know, hand management, site collection, drafting. That's my sort of light ilk. And I enjoy causing chaos. I enjoy screwing up other people's plans. And again, it's one of those situations where I probably won't win, but I'll have fun playing it alongside of things. And so we'll see if that expansion makes it, because I mean, like, Comic Book, Hacker, Kaiju, like, nerd right here. I'm all over the thematic incorporation with that one. But will I end up with a copy soon? Actually, I might end up with soon. I was in contact with the publisher and they might be sending me a copy. So that one, you know, will probably be sometime in the early quarter ones of 2024, if it comes out from me at all from that side of things. But let's stay with crowdfunding though, and let's go to Pandasaurus with Fox Experiment. Again, Fox Experiment's on several people's lists. Some people don't like the theme whatsoever of the fox taming, training situation, whatever went along with that in the history. I'm not going to get into it. I don't know it well from that aspect whatsoever. And again, I sort of like Sagrada Artisans. I kind of raked them over the coals a little bit with some of those animal meeples that were kind of screen printed and not really Fox representative. But the exclusives that they offered of the 5 to 6 player expansion and the playmats, some people went for that, and that's fine. From a mechanistic, more Euro style, I don't know. This one, again, sort of like White Castle, where expectations meeting reality. I enjoy the idea, the thought experiment of this type of game, just like White Castle. But from a whole, in terms of the point salad, drafting bonuses, claiming your actions with die rolling along the way, again, with all of these varied avenues in mechanistic scoring approaches nowadays, your Feldian, as people say, or as I prefer to call it, your point buffet style situations, your mileage is going to completely vary. And I feel like nowadays for me, the more I've played, actually, I feel like I'm less sometimes able to tell which ones actually are going to work with me and which ones aren't until I play them, which is weird, right? I feel like the more I've played, the better I should be getting at some of those. But with these just point buffet situations, I feel like it's just harder and harder to tell. And also my big concern with games that have these multitude of splaying ways of scoring is inevitably my fear is that one or two of the ways just don't really click with me. Sort of like I said with my apiary review, the research deck. It just didn't click with me as much, just like one of the small elements of unconscious mind didn't click with me as much. It didn't feel as cohesive with the rest of the, you know, combination of things that they went with. I also, to be frank, I never saw the need for a 5th or 6th player expansion. That's one of my small pet peeves on crowdfunding in general, right? Is 5th to 6th player expansions, especially when they're bundled in. Because if you're anything like me, the idea of 5 to 6 is kind of cool. The reality is it's never going to happen. It's not. And so then you're just paying for extra stuff that you're not going to use. And I don't know about you, but I have way too much extra stuff that I'm not going to use anytime soon from that side of things to need an expansion to go along with that as well. So easy pass on crowdfunding, but just like Sagrada Artisans, I mean, I'd love to give it a spin at some point as well. So it's on my trade list. Speaking of not knowing and knowing your own interests, right? One that I would be potentially high on, but again, I just can't pull the trigger for whatever reason, right? Can pull the trigger on a $50 to $100 crowdfunding project so easily nowadays. But, you know, picking up a $25 game at retail like Sky Team as a cooperative 2-player dice laying resource management, crisis management style game, I can't do, right? The same thing I've been looking at Onitama, the old, it's like 2017, abstract from Arcane Wonders. I just can't pull the trigger on that one either. Like abstract, right? Abstract! I know I'm gonna love it. I just can't do it. You know, like sometimes mental block, whatever game, whatever reason, whatever it is. But that one right now is Sky Team for me. Again, you're acting as co-pilots to land a plane where you silently assign dice to correct spaces to balance all the aspects of landing the plane, mechanically speaking, that you may need. I think this sounds fantastic as a solely two-player game to play with my wife as a cooperative, because she hates it when we play competitive sometimes. And like, I read the rules to her and she gets, you know, if the rules are anything more than about 3 or 4 minutes, she really gives me this glaring look. So from this aspect, it's got a fantastic rating on Board Game Geek already. For like an Essen release, this thing has just rocketed up the charts. It's got an 8.2 rating. It's 628th overall, folks. And it's only got 2,200 ratings, which again is actually really good for how long it's actually been out. So that's fantastic. But why don't I have it in my collection? Because I don't need more games. I don't need more games. But I can see myself really loving this one, and it's kind of a shame I probably won't get a chance to play it in the next like 6 months, because unless I get it in a trade, I'm probably just not going to pull the trigger on it, knowing myself and my own just lack of awareness of why I get some things and why I don't get other things from that aspect. So I'd love to, but it's another one of those that's probably just going to be, you know, me late riding the hype train a year or two from now. Or 5 if it's Onitama. Speaking of that one, though, again, another 2-player trick taker now, though, is Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. Again, a 2-player cooperative trick taking game. And the do trait art with this one, folks, is just absolutely fantastic. It's a spin-off of the original Jekyll and Hyde, and you're just trying to, well, maintain the balance between the duality of the personalities, as it says, through the use of trick taking as Scotland Yard's investigating you. And you have chapters that you're going to have to complete as you sort of try to evade capture. And the dichotomy between this as well as Sky Team, right? Sky Team has just gotten all the publicity of the 2-player cooperative games. It has just risen. Whereas, you know, Mandu Games here hasn't had this widely available, and it's got 121 ratings on Board Game Geek. So I'd love to see what it can do. Like I mentioned, the artwork is fantastically intriguing enough to pull me in the first place. So if the mechanism of somehow of a trick-taking cooperative game against an AI system can entice me, I'm intrigued. I had high hopes for Sail behind me from Allplay, and it kind of fell flat as a 2-player cooperative trick-taking game. So I'm hoping that this can offer me something dynamically different, more intriguing, less super hard, and just, you know, a fun experience to be able to play cooperative with my wife, because we don't have enough of those that are solely 2-player. We have plenty that play more than 2, but sometimes it's hard to find the ones that play best at 2. We'll just stay with this theme here. Another one that I have not been able to pull the trigger on is a light style card game, Forest Shuffle, which again was like sort of about an Essen-esque release, which has kind of lurked in the background as a light card laying tableau builder, where you're trying to get the most valuable trees and attract species to them via just card play. And all you're doing in this game, right, is you're drawing cards, face down cards or face up, and adding them to your hand, or just playing the cards, paying the cost, and putting them in your tableau in the first place. You have forest dwellers that are set collecting and multi-use at the same time. And you've got a deck that is randomly timed because you have 3 winner cards that are just sort of dispersed in there, it says. And whenever you get to the bottom of the 3 of them, the game just ends. So I just got another light style cooperative game, and this is competitive, but I just got it along with my Spirit Island Nature Incarnate expansion, Scoventier. I'm mispronouncing that. So again, I'll throw the spelling over here so you can actually see what it is. But very interesting twist on cooperative, but just very light style card driven, very much like this, where, I mean, you can buy this for $25 on Amazon right now. But from a cleverness, unique, just fun filling aspect of things, that's why I've seen it show up on a lot of people's lists lately. So that's definitely been one. And the other one, which is actually on my upcoming retail widely available list, because it's not a widely available, which is always interesting. I look at these lists and I go, how many of these games are only available because you have a channel? Well, again, you know, that makes it a weird criteria. It may be one of your best games, but it's, you know, just not widely available until 2024 for a lot of people. Then, you know, is it really a 2023 game? Is it really a 2024 game? And maybe that's why I was getting confused earlier with Clank Catacombs. Anyway, Vale of Eternity was this one where you're basically monster hunting and taming them as minions. Only you have an engine building, hand management, set collection style of things going on instead. And you have 3 phases where you're just drafting cards, doing actions, and then taking the effects of the stuff that you've summoned. So, I mean, it's rinse and repeat wrote a little bit in terms of what we've heard otherwise description way, but I mean, the artwork is fantastic and stuff may get me through the door. And so apparently people are hot enough on it already with the limited availability that they're putting on their top 10 list of this year. So it's on my short list of things to acquire. The weight, again, is probably not going to be, if you're looking for a heavy Euro game, going to appeal to you whatsoever. It's like rating at a 2.11 weight right now on Board Game Geek. So that may not be to your, you know, most interest. But mechanically speaking, it's doing things, again, in theory, I think I should like. Although that also is what I said about Fit to Print. Things I think I should like and things I end up not liking as much as I probably wished I would have category. So yeah, this one is probably, of all these games on this list, near or at the top of the list of the ones I want to acquire, you know, sooner rather than later. Don't need to acquire, right? I just talked about 2 $20 or $25 games that I can't pull the trigger on. And trying to buy something like this right now, I'm sure, you know, if I go look up this on Board Game Oracle, it's going to be $50 or something. Nah, just kidding. It's only $25, but it's all pre-order. It's all pre-order. It's all pre-order on Board Game Oracle. You can't buy it yet. So, although technically the 2023 release, really a 2024 release, I don't know. It's just always interesting how these things get sparsed out. I don't have a good answer for any of this stuff, right? That's why, like I said at the beginning of the video, my best of the year last year of 2022 wasn't until a third of the way through 2023, because I didn't have the time, the bandwidth, the games to actually play them until a couple months into the next year. So as nice as these lists are, and as much as they attract the clicks and the views, I mean, that's why everyone does them. That's why everyone starts putting them out at the beginning of December. It's a rush to get it out. Because it's funny, because once 1 or 2 come out, they all come out flooding in a second. So it's just interesting. I like watching it from a consumer standpoint and seeing how that goes. But this is one that I don't know if I want to pre-order. I can't. I can't pre-order. I can't. I want to so badly. Somehow, again, pre-ordering this game because it's unavailable is easier than getting one of those other 2 like Sky Team or Forest Shuffle, even though they're available currently. Again, crazy hoops that your mind jumps through. My mind. Your mind doesn't do this whatsoever, I'm sure. So you don't need to worry about that. Now we're going to go back to back here, when we're going to stick with the unreleased in 2023, which again, as a self-appointed hypocrite here, because I had one on my list last year in Mists Over Carcassonne. I understand the feeling of wanting to get some of that out there and wanting to get other people interested in something you're really interested in, but I also feel like it's a little bit of generative hype, because when I look at 2023's list as well, you didn't need to have this on this list. This is a broad spanning list right now. You know, the compilation I mentioned at the beginning, right? There's lots and lots of games. And so this next one here is Evenfall. Nanox games, DLP games, it's a tableau builder, hand management, variable power use with a nature theme. Clans of magic, boundaries of realities are collapsing. And you're opening up the glowing gateways of the world tree, trying to engine build with, well, familiar and novel mechanisms from the engine building aspect, like I just said. So 3 rounds, most points. Now, how does it actually interact, differ, or anything else? Well, I mean, there's some reviews out. But again, just like Vale of Eternity, the only really reviews you're seeing are the ones that got the pre-release copies. So, I mean, that's fine. I'm trying to stay away from that as well, too. And so I'm going to try and reflect that in my list going forward of any of these top 10s, top 20s of whatever I decide to do this year. So I think it looks very visually appealing. I think that's what brought in a lot of people. I think there was some Essen availability, if I'm remembering correctly. But, I mean, sure, it's on my wish list. It's on my want list. But is it going to be on the 2024 list as well? That's going to be interesting. So we'll see. I'm intrigued by it enough to give it a look-see when it goes widely available at retail in the US market. But apart from that, that's all I can really say at this point. Just too big of an unknown otherwise. Another one here at the end that is sort of caught me completely by surprise, that's making the tail end of this meta reviewer list now, is Tales from the Red Dragon Inn. And from Slugfest Games, I'll be frank with you guys, you know, when I see Red Dragon Inn, I think of the pseudo drinking, non-drinking game, card-based, just whatever, right? And so my eyes kind of glazed over a little bit. Again, you know, being transparent here, when I covered it on the crowdfunding. And I think they just had an expansion as well this year. So it's on people's lists as sort of a narrative, lighter co-op dungeon crawl with more of a scenario-driven, specific objective style. So maybe more like this than anything else, which is very actually intriguing to see that, you know, a couple people that you'd recognize media-wise have it on their top 10. When it wasn't on, again, my radar whatsoever from any standpoint. And that's the reason I'm doing this list, is not only to put it on my radar, but maybe to put it on your radar too, if nothing else. Now they say that the game is going to be multi-scenario driven, linked together, AI, fold out map, you know, tricky puzzle-ish. So hopefully I'm assuming that the big appeal is that it's not doing the same thing in every scenario, giving you a wide variety of how you approach it, and maybe hopefully not just pure puzzle like solvable. But if you have a little bit of lighter style dungeon-esque crawl like this, I mean, this is the reason that this is so successful, right? So again, I don't have any nostalgia, any interest in the IP necessarily, but I mean, if it's doing something fun, unique mechanically, and especially if it's a little on the lighter side, I mean, it's like a 2.5 on Board Game Geek right now, weight rating, 1 to 4, you know, the only thing I would be worried about is that I don't know, at least based off of surface glancing value-wise for this video's purpose and sake, if it's one of those dungeon crawls where you need to have 4. That's probably the biggest turnoff overall to incorporating anything new lately, is that, you know, I just can't handle necessarily 4 characters at once nowadays all the time. It's just a lot, you know, especially at a lower player count, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. So, you know, again, this one, we'll see if this one starts to make waves and makes traction, but it looks like it's in stock, at least limited availability online. If you go over to Board Game Oracle, there are a few places, but again, I mean, you know, as a dungeon crawl coming from crowdfunding, yeah, it's going to range anywhere between about $80 and $100. So were there exclusives? I think there's a few expansions to go along with it. How much is necessary? Are you willing to chase that dragon? Which is going to be the title of one of my upcoming videos as well. Speaking of a different system of games in addition. So yeah, food for thought on that one as well. What else do we have up last up here at the end? Banish Snakes. I actually traded for this 4 months ago. It got put in one of the side cabinets, not in this room, right? That's not something I'd like to admit. It's not something my wife likes to hear, that there are games outside of this room elsewhere stored in our house. But it's true. And I just have completely forgotten about it. And just a different style of cooperative gameplay, pandemic-esque. It takes the 5th century Ireland, and you're just drawing cards, getting new challenges thrown your way, a diagram of Great Britain to keep track of the decline of civilization, which I believe is sort of what the end game happens, or end game triggers, if you will. And if you succeed, well, Christianity thrives. If not, paganism overruns Europe. Okay, I mean, I'm reading straight from the Board Game Geek description here. I didn't realize it was that, but take that for what you will. It's got sort of an area majority influence aspect going on with a pandemic style via card-based system. So I'd love to try it out sometime soon. Maybe that's one of the ones I'll bring out the next game night that I have with some folks. So, I mean, it's just been sitting in my closet for months now. And so we'll see if that has any interest to anybody. I'm intrigued. It should be easier to get to the table than a lot of these others. So just going back to that reviewers list here at the end, there were 2 others that I have not had any chance, any inkling of getting. Evacuation, sort of the reverse engine build where your civilization is gradually dying and your mechanisms get worse and your maneuvers get worse and you have to more optimize as you go along with less available to you, sort of the opposite of what we're normally used to. That is on a ton of people's lists as one of their best Euro games of the year as a whole. Things that I didn't cover that I've sort of alluded to, covered elsewhere, or may be on my top lists that I'm not going to cover here. Just of note, Marvel Zombies, jury's still out on that one for me. Freelancers, I talked about that in my review. I mean, it's super light, but if you really like what it's bringing to you, it's an excellent experience. Wild Child West from Direwolf, again, sort of heard mixed feelings on that. It definitely appealed to some people in addition. A few people apparently have Horseless Carriage from Splatter on there as, you know, definitely a heavier one as well. Earthborn Rangers, the LCG, self-contained LCG from crowdfunding that got delivered. Obviously Voidfall being Voidfall is high on this list as well as the really recently, even more recently released Scholars of the South Tigris. So that one's super high. And then again, the heavier Euros that I'm not even delving into, as I alluded to earlier, the Hegemonies, the Distilleds, the World Wonders, Barcelona, that thing, all of those ilks along with Darwin's Journey and Nucleum. So yeah, I mean, I talked about Apiary on my review separately as well. So, I mean, you've just got a whole wide smattering. Again, at the time of me filming this, there's like 45 games that are meeting criteria. So if you go over and check out that list, again, link down in the description below, you can see how spread out people are division-wise this year, which honestly, again, like I said at the beginning, is very, very appealing because it helps you find out maybe who's in line with more of your tastes and who's not. Or just, you know, again, like I did with this video, highlighting some of the ones that, okay, am I really interested in this one? Helping me dive into it a little bit deeper to say, okay, am I really interested in it? You know, after doing this video now, I've looked at Fox Experiment, for example, going back in the middle of the video, I have no interest in the Fox Experiment, really. I'll try it if somebody really gets it to me in a good deal or a good trade, even if it was good otherwise, things like that you dig up that you're like, oh, no, maybe. Oh, and then, well, maybe not. So I just wonder too, from an outsider's perspective sometimes in these situations, or even just in my own head, like, am I internally justifying or am I internally raising this game up higher on a list in any form or shape because I paid more for it, because I want to feel like it's more worth it for me? And the honest answer is I don't have the answer for myself. And so I can't presume to know what anyone else is doing, but it's one of those things I go, okay, I got, you know, this level of joy out of a $100 game, and I got this level of joy out of a $25 game. Like, the first thing that really makes me think of or makes me wonder is maybe I should just buy more $25 games, right? So I don't know. Those are games that I will, you know, love to play at some point in 2024, because it's not happening in 2023 with any of them, but they're ones that are just on my eye. And again, I wonder, knowing all of this, would it change my rankings, or vice versa? Let's put it this way. If other people had played all of the games on my list, would it change some of their feelings as well too? Again, not to say that my feelings are right, but again, it's just to say, if I haven't played all the games that you have, and you haven't played all the games that I have, you know, for us to make top 10 lists and try to say this, you know, versus this, it's apples to oranges. It's just always an interesting thought experiment more than anything else, because it's not feasible either. And I don't expect it to be, but it's just an interesting compilation when I see these lists about saying, okay, what would I like of this? What does pique my interest? What would I be interested in from other people's lists, and why? Or why not? Or my thoughts, ramblings, and everything else that goes along with it. This video is way too long already. You don't care about any of this stuff. You're not watching at this point anyway, so have a great freaking fantastic day. Hopefully your holidays have been awesome. Yeah. That's all I got. Stay classy. No rant and ramble here. I rambled too much in the video to begin with. People are going to let me know in the comment section. Oh, you didn't talk about enough mechanisms. Oh, you didn't talk about enough game things. It's my channel. I'm going to do what I want. Thanks for watching. Over 9,000!